It is not wholesome for the living to lay eyes upon the souls of the dead. Case number 1. The Soul Stealer. Gathered overhead as Jack Gill crossed Oldham Street in the direction of Kane's Rare Books. The shop was barely noticeable among the untidy facades, a Manchester institution for over 3 decades. It was Sunday. Consequently, the store was closed, but Gill wasn't there on business. Within a minute or two, the shutters rolled up, revealing the shop's proprietor, Norman Kane. No words were exchanged, just a simple nod, followed by the obligatory handshake, which, from Gill's perspective, was always a perplexing gesture, given that Norman Kane had no hands of his own. To shake Kane's hand was to clutch and jiggle a cold plastic fist. Their destination was the basement, a room under lock and key, the private collection. Kane unlocked a small glass display cabinet. His stiff plastic appendage settled on a perfectly ordinary-looking sketchbook. He carefully untucked it. A homemade combination lock had been affixed to the hardback cover. "A friend of mine acquired this," he said, his porcelain-white fingers brushing the lock. "Before you ask, I don't know the combination. What is it?" "Lovecraft?" Gill asked. Kane looked up. "Not quite, though you might say the story it contains is full of Lovecraftian flavor. It was given to me for safekeeping. It's supposed to stay locked." "Now then," Kane began. "It all started in the old city of York, with the girl with the sketchbook. The location of the body was public knowledge. The victim, David Hayes, had fallen to his death from Bootham Bar. Paranormal investigator Peter Van Melson stumbled upon the scene, and he looked to the vacant faces surrounding him, saw the pool of blood in the middle of the road. Then he sensed a presence nearby. Turning, he saw a young woman, dark-haired, diminutive. The girl was clutching a sketchbook. She held it out before her, scribbling vigorously. Van Melson wondered what exactly she was working on. He was about to move in her direction when the girl quite abruptly snapped the sketchbook closed, turned, and fled. He had a knack for such things, a sixth sense. He had a hunch that the girl with the sketchbook was up to something nefarious, something supernatural, if his instincts had any veracity. Then the two would cross paths again. Driven by his quest for the enigmatic girl, the investigator saw to it that he spent more time in the city of York. A man in search of death. His patience finally paid off almost 2 months later. Outside a pub on Fossgate, a young man was left to quietly bleed out by the curb after a brawl. Van Melson sensed that tingling impression at the base of his neck. He slowly rotated. There, under the light of the dim yellow street lamps, he saw the girl with the sketchbook. She held the book out in front of her, but she wasn't sketching. She was poised, expectant. Her attention was focused exclusively on the still body of the young man. The moment the boy stopped breathing, the girl became animated, scribbling almost fiercely. The young man had passed on, and the girl with the sketchbook knew it. It wasn't until a third death, a car accident on Bishop Thorpe Road, that he finally caught her. Van Melson saw the youngster emerge from the depths of the darkness that held her. Her eyes widened, revealing emerald pools. She looked down at the sketchbook in her hands and cursed under her breath, clutching the book like a foreign object. Van Melson tentatively approached. "I'm too late," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "It isn't me that wants them." "You know, it isn't me." "I know," Van Melson offered. They relocated to a quiet tea room. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ellen," the girl proffered. "Ellen Moore." I know what's happening here. Ellen, Van Melson said softly, you aren't the first artist to serve as an unwitting agent of the hidden ones. You won't be the last. Ellen stammered. How did you know about the hidden one when I'm out there sketching? She confessed. It's like a dream. I only ever recall the person as they lay dying. She looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. Can you help me? Yes, Van Melson replied. But you're going to have to take me to it. Reluctantly, Ellen agreed to lead him to the lair of the thing. Van Melson explained his knowledge. The hidden ones were ancient occupants of the earth, from a dark epoch he called the Deep Twilight, beings who retreated to the subterranean world, a honeycomb labyrinth of shadowlands. But deep in the earth they encountered the great old ones. The hidden ones worshipped them, and in return they were changed, infected with a terrible, polluted intent. They needed fuel to return to the surface, fuel that only human beings could provide. The hidden one was what Van Melson referred to as a soul stealer. To sketch a person in the throes of death into that accursed book was to pledge their soul to its spoiled leaves. What have I done? Ellen asked, her eyes fraught with fear. This thing's beyond our experience, Van Melson assured her. But the time had come to make the long journey into the hills. They took a bus deep into the Heworthian hills, into the heart of the dense woodland, accompanied by a dreadful silence. No birds, no squirrels, only the pattering of rainfall above and the crunching of undergrowth below. They crested a small acclivity overlooking an open pit. Almost immediately, a strange voice rose from the darkness of the aperture. Give, it commanded the word. Ellen approached the edge of the hole. She took the sketchbook and held it out over the aperture. She let go. Instead of falling, the sketchbook simply floated there in midair, before gradually descending into the void below. Retching, spluttering, grunting sounds followed from the deep, then deathly silence, and then out of the Stygian gloom floated the object. The sketchbook returned. Ellen collected the cold book. She opened it to the latest page. Van Melson saw 3 characters sketched in a dark, crimson-colored liquid. Ellen proffered the translation. It says, fail again, and the next soul will be yours. Van Melson took Ellen back to his cottage in Rosedale, in his personal library. Surrounded by over 1,000 books, they formulated a plan. Van Melson looked at Ellen's sketchbook lying on the table. I fear that book is meant for its eyes only, he said seriously. It is not wholesome for the living to lay eyes upon the souls of the dead. So what are we going to do about it? Ellen asked. We need another soul to commit to the sketchbook, Van Melson said. Ellen gawped at him. Tomorrow, at the crack of dawn, we head back out there, he continued. We'll take nothing but an electric lantern, the sketchbook, and your pencils. What's the lantern for? She asked. The investigator winked cryptically. You'll see. The next morning was cold and mist-cloaked. They pressed on into the heart of the forsaken forest, finding themselves overlooking the aperture once more. The pit resembled an inky black eye. Give. The voice came from the bowels of the earth. Van Melson turned to Ellen. Listen, we must approach the edge now. Give. The voice came again. In response to the dreadful command, Van Melson switched on the high-powered battery lantern. He held it out above the pit. We'll only get one shot at this, he whispered. Be ready. Ellen opened the sketchbook and withdrew a pencil, her heart galloping. Van Melson released his grip on the lantern. They watched in quiet amazement as the glowing object hovered there in midair, just like the sketchbook had. Then, slowly at first, but with increasing rapidity, the lamp began to descend, drawn into the earth by the ravenous hidden one. They heard it before they saw it, a snorting sound followed by a skittering sound, the sound of something retreating, eager to elude the battery-operated intruder. Van Melson averted his gaze from the pit to preserve his sanity. He turned to Ellen. Her eyes blazed as she stared into the abyss. Her hand moved back and forth across the sketchbook furiously. Tears stained her cheeks, but still she sketched, absorbing in its entirety the nightmarish thing that had been illuminated below. Van Melson could do nothing but watch as she endured the horror of ages. In a moment of weakness, he caught sight of Ellen's work, sketched by Ellen's nervous hand. Van Melson witnessed dark lines, multi-jointed limbs connected to a vast central bulk, covered with minuscule pores oozing dense blobs of graphite, a terrible mien akin to that of a bloated toad, with a horribly distorted orifice pouring a dark, viscous liquid. The hidden one was coming apart down there, torn asunder by the glow of the lantern. So adapted to the darkness had it become that it could no longer tolerate even the most minimal exposure to light. An appalling mixture of shrieks emerging from the dark place, immediately followed by an abrupt silence. Ellen stopped sketching, recovering himself. Van Melson lunged at the girl, snatched the sketchbook, and snapped it closed in midair before it plummeted to the ground, and the lantern in the pit died out, blotting out forever the incomprehensible remains of the hidden one. "That's quite a tale," uttered Jack Gill. Sitting in Norman Kane's basement, he eyed the locked sketchbook curiously. "Indeed," Kane agreed. Ellen Moore made a full recovery. The hidden one's influence over her passed with its death, and Van Melson, Gill asked. Kane laughed, a rusty sound. "Peter's a resilient bugger, but he'll carry the burden of what he saw on the pages of this book for the rest of his days." "What about the pit?" filled in, following an anonymous complaint to Natural England. The atmosphere was tense in the underground room. Suddenly, the penny dropped for Jill. He looked up at Kane, his face like chalk. "The thing," he stammered. "The hidden one, its soul, it's in the book." Kane simply nodded and returned the accursed object to the glass cabinet on the north wall. As he did so, Gill was reminded of the words of Peter Van Melson. "The book is meant for its eyes only. It is not wholesome for the living to lay eyes upon the souls of the dead."